Hi and welcome back to part 2 of the beginner's course for FreeCAD. We're looking at FreeCAD from a beginner's perspective, but with emphasis on the fundamentals and workflows. In the last video, we looked at how to set up FreeCAD, some basic preferences, and how to use the navigation device with a simple sketch to navigate FreeCAD to get the best out of your experience. In this video, we're modeling something from the ground up and exporting that out to file as STL format. So let's have a look at the techniques that we're going to use in this course. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to the site. I also have a Ko-Fi or a coffee site that you can donate to if you so desire, and that's at ko-fi.com/MANG0. I also run a Patreon where you can subscribe and get extra content, and that's at www.patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions. Any money that's kindly donated will be used to expand the channel. So let's examine the workflow we're going to be using. We're going to be using something called a part design workflow. And this will be used in cooperation with another workbench called the Sketcher. And we're going to be going back and forth from the Sketcher to the part design, creating sketches for pads and pockets, and using the part design to actually create those pads and pockets. After that, we're going to be using dress ups in the part design to add fillets. We're next going to be using the finished product and outputting it as a file, as a model to be used somewhere else, say in another 3D package. And this is the object we'll be creating. Now from experience, I know I can create this object in a number of different ways. Any new object we come across, we need to examine and decide which techniques we're going to use. This involves breaking down the object into its individual parts. So for instance, if we look from the top, we can see we have 4 holes, a rectangle with curved sides, and a rectangle that is extruded out from the center and also has curves on the edges. It's a good idea to have a look at this in individual profiles, so we can see from the left that we just have a T. So in my mind, I can model this from the top down without the need to go from the side to add any geometry from the side. I also know that I can take the approach from the left profile, this side, and loft profile through this and then curve off the edges. We're going to go from a single plane, so from the top plane, and then we'll introduce multiple planes as we go. So we're in FreeCAD, we've got it open, and we create a new document, either from this icon or we can come up to the top left. You'll see that we have 2 tabs down the bottom, which we can close the start page, we don't need that. This tab is the same name as our current document. Let's first save this document. So come up to File, Save, and I'm just going to call it Example 1. So we've got our document saved, and we can use this drop down to start our process in the part design. Now in the part design workbench, we have 2 tabs along the left hand side. We have the model tab that shows a tree view. So each time we add a body or an object to our screen, it will appear here, or if we do an action. And then we have the task. Now in the part design, this guides you through the part design process. So it's asking us to create a body. If we click on that, what will happen is that we'll get the next stage, create a sketch. If we jump over to the model and click on that, you can see a body has been created with another object inside. And this is invisible. You can see it's grayed out. It's not disabled, it's just invisible. Let's now create a sketch. Click on Create a Sketch. It's going to ask us what plane we want to place this on. So we're going to start modeling in 2D and then convert it to 3D with 3D actions. Let's take a look at our model. We're going to be modeling everything from one plane, the top plane. Now this is known as the XY. It's like you're looking down on your workpiece onto the object. So I can see I need a rectangle with curved edges and holes in each of the corners. For this project, we're going to be creating those curved edges as something known as fillet. These are known as dress up actions, and they should be done last of all just to finish off the object. So I need to select a plane. Now I want the XY plane, and you can see this XY plane laying here. I'm going to select it from this side. We can select it from the screen if we want, but it's best to select it from here. You can see them highlight as we go over them. Now if we look at the XY plane and look at our navigation cube, we can see how it's orientated, and they're orientated the same. So top is XY, front is XZ, etc. Let's hit OK. And what will happen, we'll be thrown into the sketcher, and you'll see that we're looking down from the top and we're looking onto our workpiece, and we've got the green and the red axis, X and Y. So now we can put some geometry on the screen. If we look at our toolbars, these may not be arranged in this manner. If you want to move these about, you can click on the divider here and drag these into position. So we can drag them wherever we want. If we go too far, then these will be shrunk and you'll get this chevron, which we can drop down and get to the other parts in there. If you click on these to undock this window, then we can actually dock this wherever we want. Sometimes it can be a bit awkward getting this back, and to get it back, best idea is to come over to the left hand side, hold it there for a couple of seconds until you see the window appear, and then drop it into place. Now to add any of this geometry running along here, such as a rectangle, or you may see it defaulted as a centered rectangle, we just select the item from the screen, and then you'll see the mouse pointer change to a crosshairs, and underneath that you'll see a red rectangle. So that's the last tool you selected. It's worth going over to the left hand side and having a look at some of the options here before we start. Let's bring this down a bit. You can see we've got the solver message. This will change constantly when we place geometry onto the screen. We've also got the edit controls. In here, if we expand this out, you can see there's a number of checked options. I've got the auto constraints checked and the avoid redundant auto constraints also checked. That means that if I hover over any of these lines, you'll see an additional icon appear by the right hand side of the rectangle, or whatever item you've selected from the toolbar. This additional item is a constraint. So if we look and match it to our toolbar, you can see we've got the point on line constraint or point on object constraint. And if I hover over this center point, you can see we've got coincident constraint, this one here. This means when I place this rectangle, I can constrain it to anywhere on here. For instance, let's place my pointer over this line, click, and then place the pointer over this line. You'll see a number of red items appear around the object, and we have constraints at these points. So you can see we've got the point on line constraint and the point on line constraint here. If I did the same here and moved over to the center point, you see we've got a coincident constraint, and I come out and I can drop it wherever I want, and that'll be constrained to that center there. Hit escape to get the mouse pointer back, or hit the right mouse button, and we've got our pointer back. We can now manipulate these into position. You can see the constraints are stopping the object from moving from certain points. So this point and line constraint is keeping it on this vertical axis, and the same for the horizontal. If we don't want those, we can click on the constraint and hit delete on the keyboard, and this will move us off of that constraint. You can see we've got this constraint here. Another way of actually selecting that is to come down and find the constraint along the left hand side in the constraints box, and we can click the constraints, and you can see the constraints. Here's the coincident constraint we handed. It's there, and they're highlighted in green. So let's select one constraint and come up and find that in here. So you can see the constraint there, and just hit delete. and therefore we can move this off that line. These other constraints can be moved as well, so we can click on this one and say delete it, and now this isn't kept horizontal, this can have some angle. So let's remove this geometry, and I'm going to remove it with a box selection. Let's shrink this down, and I'm going to click into spare space, hold the mouse pointer down, and draw a box around what we have. Everything is highlighted in green. If I want to say just delete everything except for this line here, I just click it again, that turns white, and now we can hit delete. Let's get rid of this one as well, hit delete again. So let's create our rectangle in here. Now I'm going to drop this down and use a different rectangle, the centered rectangle. So you can see we've got the rectangle icon by the side of our mouse pointer, and I'm going to hover over this center point here and create a coincident constraint. Click. Now I haven't got my mouse pointer held down, I'm just going to bring this out and click again. You can see we've got the number of constraints, and we've also got something called a symmetry constraint going across this point. So these two are symmetry constraints. That's found here. I'm going to right click so I get the mouse pointer back, and we can see how that symmetry constraint, if I click on this point and drag it, we can see how everything's kept in symmetry. It's just a symmetry across this center point. That sets some height and width. So I'm going to select one of these lines, this one here, and set a width, also known as length, which is a length, and I'm going to say about 100 millimeters there. Also going to set the height, this one here, set the height. You notice we've got a change behind here. Everything's gone green. Let's see what's just happened. So I'm just going to cancel out of here. You see it's gone back to white, and we're going to scroll up to the top. Notice our solver message has changed. Under constrained 1 degrees of freedom. That means this can be actually moved in 1 degree of freedom, so one direction. I know this is 2 directions, it's counted as 1 because it's just along the vertical. We can find that degree of freedom by clicking on the one DOF here, and you'll see in green the points that are not locked down. So these points aren't locked down. The minute we add a height, so at the moment I've got the wrong selection, because if we look, hit OK, you see we've got this line selected and these 2 points selected. So it's taken those into selection. So we must click into spare space and then click on this line again and add the height. Everything's gone a bright green behind, and we'll get to that in a minute. Let's type in 50 millimeters and hit enter. What we have is a fully constrained sketch. You can see it's saying fully constrained. This is important in CAD because it means this can't move, so it's not going to move by accident, and it won't destroy any geometry that's placed on top of it. So it's fully constrained down. So let's hit close and see what we have. We've gone back to the part design because we created the sketch from the part design. And we've got this sketch here. Let's go to the model. You can see the sketch has been selected and it's inside the body. So this is known as the active body. If we look at this body and right click, you can see we've got toggle active body. When this is bold, that means it's active. Any sketches I add will get added to the active body. One other thing to look at is the axis cross. So go up to view, toggle axis cross. You can see our axis cross is in the center here. Now this is relevant because it's where we're going to transform this body from. So we can actually transform this body, and the handler will be placed in here. So this is the center point of the body. And this is controlled by the sketch. So if I double click the sketch, you can see if I add some angle to this, we've got our axis cross sitting here. And this is the point of origin where we started this from. So this is the sketch. If we moved geometry over, then our body will be starting here. So the first sketch determines where the point of rotation is going to be. Let's close this and get back to our modeling. Now we've got the sketch. It's fully constrained and it's known as a closed sketch. So we can pad a closed sketch in the part design. So padding means extrusion. So we're going to extrude this up using a pad command. Now if we look along the toolbar, we can see a number of different colored icons. So we've got red ones here, or red and blue, and then we've got the yellow ones here. Yellows are additive, red are subtractive. So if we add a material like a pad, they're additive. If we're removing material away from this, like a pocket, they're subtractive. Let's pad this sketch. I can see it's been selected because it's highlighted in green, but it's worth just selecting it from the left hand side here and using the pad option, or coming up to the part design and create an additive feature and pad. On the left hand side in the task, you can see we've got another window that's appeared, the pad parameters, and this tells us how this pad is going to be applied to the object. So I want to apply a 5mm pad to this. If I click off, you can see that's shrunk down to 5mm now. We've got a number of other options which we're not going to go into, we're just going to keep this simple. Let's hit OK. Now we've got the base for our objects. We're going to create another sketch on top of this to add the holes. Now we could come into the pad and add the holes here, but I'm going to go and click on this face. Now I clicked once and add a sketch to that face to add the holes. If you double click, you'll notice that the body has been selected. Double click selects the whole object. So just click off and click that face and come up to the sketch icon, create a sketch, and that will add the sketch to that face. And you can see the sketch laying across that face. We're still from the top plane looking down, but we can see that sketch has been aligned with the face. Let's add some geometry. Now for the geometry, we want to add our holes going across here. So we're going to use the circle and we're going to pocket these holes. So we're going to create these circles as voids in this piece of material. I'm just going to click, pull out the circle, click again, and we're just going to place a number of circles in the proximate vicinity of the corners. Let's add some constraints to these. So I want 5mm holes. Now I can come in and click this hole or this circle and add a diameter constraint. So constrain diameter like so. And we could set that to, let's say 10mm. So 10mm holes, so that's 10mm. But I wouldn't then go and set all these to 10mm because this may change and I want all these to stay in relation to this one. There's two ways of doing this. We could set the first one and then click to select. So I'm just clicking on all of these edges and coming up and using a equality constraint, and that sets those all equal to this one. I'm just going to come up to edit and undo. Another way of doing this, let's click on this constraint here and just hit the delete, so delete that constraint, is to select them all and then use the radius again. Select all of them and come up and set the radius. And we'll set that one to 10mm. You can see the equality has been placed all the way across there. So these are all equal now, but they're still not constrained down, they're not in the right place. So we need to do that. I'm going to click on top. So we're looking directly down on here. And I want to reference the box underneath, this pad underneath. To do that, we need to pull in the geometry. Now, because if we go over to the model, we can see that we've got a number of items that's added to here. So we've got the pad that's been added and the sketch underneath. We can see they're in the same body. So anything in the same body we have access to. Let's click on this little icon here, the external geometry tool. This allows us to pick up points. So we hover over the point here, or here, you can see the vertex is being highlighted and also the edges. If I click on that vertex here, I've pulled in that point. I can pull in more. We're just going to pull in one for the time being. You can press the right mouse button to get the points back, and we'll come back over to tasks and see what we have. If I scroll down to the bottom, let's bring this out a bit, you can see we've got elements and we've got a purple cross. If I drop down the mode to external, we can see that 0.5, 5 point, is external geometry that's been pulled in. This one here. We can use that in our constraints. So I'm going to click the center point of this circle and this point and use horizontal distance of 10 mil, and also do this again. So I'm going to pull this constraint out and push it to the side, and this one, and use a vertical constraint again of 10 millimeters. You can see this one's gone green, so it's fully locked down. This one is fully constrained, but the others aren't. So we've got constrained geometry, but unconstrained geometry around the outside. Let's start constraining these geometries now. So I want to select this point and keep them in line. So this keeps in line with this one. We could go through and select this point and pull in geometry from our external source, our external pad, and do the same, but it ends up getting messy. So we want least datum constraints. These are called datum constraints because they've got data added to them. The least datum constraints are a lot more easy to control, and that makes our sketch a lot more neater. So to put these in line with each other, we're going to use the horizontal and vertical constraints. Now, you probably saw those in the previous pad. We had lines that went here and here. They're not only just for lines, they can be used for points as well. So these are at distance. So I can take this point and add a vertical constraint in there. And if I move that, they all move together. And we can do the same with this point and this point. We're horizontal. These move now. And this one. Now I want to do the same with this point and this point in here. If we have trouble with all these, trying to get to this point, can't really see it in there, let's click off to unselect that. Let's click a constraint, this one here, and come up to it. And there's a tick by the side of it. If I uncheck that, it hides it from screen. Let's do it with this one as well. Let's hide that one. Now I can see this point in here. So I'm going to click it and click this one and keep those in line. Horizontal constraint. And we're going to do the same with this point and keep those in line. So I shouldn't be able to move this left or right, but I can still move it up and down. Let's have a look at our degrees of freedom. So we've got 2 degrees of freedom. So we've got up and down here, and we have left and right here. And if I click, you can see these have been highlighted. So we need to lock these down somehow. To do that, well, we're going to do the reverse here. So we're going to do this one over here. So that's bring in external geometry and bring in this point. Hit escape or press the right mouse button to get the mouse pointer back and select these 2 points. Now watch the under constrained degrees of freedom. Place a height. It's changed to 1 now. So let's type in 10. And you notice this one's gone green. So we've got 1 degree of freedom. Let's click that and you'll see these 2 points show. Unselect them by selecting space. So let's select this point and this point and place some horizontal length in there and set that to 10. And you can see already it's fully constrained and everything is green. So hit OK and we've got our constraints. We'll just bring those out. Let's come back over and I'm just going to show those ones that I made invisible. So we're fully constrained. Let's come up and hit close. And if I click off, you can see the sketch has been added to there. So you can see the white sketch if I add some rotation to here. We want to create pockets with this sketch. So we want to pocket through to create the holes for this item. You can see that if we follow the body down, we've got a green arrow, and this is known as the tip. So this green arrow there, it's the tip, it's the very last action. So let's select the sketch and come up to the pocket or come up to part design. It's a subtractive feature. So come down to the subtractive features and create a pocket. You can see those pockets have gone through 5mm. Now if we set this to say 1mm, we'll get a pocket that only goes part the way through. Now if we drop the type down and go to first, that takes us up to and past that first face. And so that's gone all the way through the bottom, which is what we want. Let's hit OK. We get another action in our model tab. You can see the little green arrow sitting there. And that's the pocket. At any time we can come in and change this. So I can set it back to dimension and that will change that pocket there. Let's cancel out. And now we've created the base for our model. So looking back to this, we can see we've got this base here. We haven't applied the fillets because that's a dress up feature and we do that last of all. There's a reason why we do that last. Now I'm going to concentrate on this feature. I can do that still from modeling from the top plane. So we look at this, we can see it's just a rectangle and that rectangle has been extruded upwards. If we ignore the fillet here, we can see that the rectangle is the same width as the base. So we're back in FreeCAD and we're going to model that feature. Make sure you're saving regularly as well. You can either use a Control-S or File Save, and we're going to start modeling a rectangle in here. Now for this, we're going to do the same. Make sure nothing's selected and select the top face. And we're going to click on the sketch icon, create a sketch. Now I'm going to pull in some geometry because I want it butting up against this line here. So I'm going to pull in this line and this line. And you can see those are coming, and we scroll down to the bottom, we can see the two lines are pulled in from the base. Let's create a rectangle. So I'm going to come up to the rectangle. This time I'm just going to use a standard rectangle, click on that, and I'm going to use the auto constraints and hover over this line. Point and line constraint, click once and move the mouse over to the other side, and again use the point and line constraint. You see it's gone over this hole, which doesn't matter for the time being, because what we're going to do is make symmetry across this line here. To do that, press the right mouse button, get the mouse pointer back, and click this point and this point, and these 2 points we want centered on this line. So selected the 2 points first and then select the line and use the symmetry constraint. It's gone orange. This means it's over constrained. If we go up to the top, you can see we got redundant constraints and it's saying number 7. What may happen is that you may get the report view pop up here. And if you remember back to when we set the preferences, you need to go in there and uncheck the show report view on errors. And that's at the beginning of the video where we went through the settings. Let's click on that redundant constraint, number 7, and hit the delete key. You can see that's removed that redundant constraint, but it's still not fully constrained. We've still got 1 degree of freedom, which is this way. I'm going to select one of these lines, doesn't matter which, so this line. I'm going to set a distance. I'm going to set that one to 5mm and hit OK. We've now got that sketch on the surface, and we're going to pad that sketch. So hit close, make sure the sketch is selected, and use the pad. Again, it's asking us for the length. Let's have a look at this length. Now I want something like 25mm for the length. So we can see that length is in there. And our model is starting to take shape. Let's hit OK. Now we've got the shape of our model, but we need to finish it up. Let's compare this with our model at the moment. So we've done this part and this part with the holes. We now need to add the curvature going across here. To do that, we're going to use something called dress up. And this is a finishing feature. So this is the thing you should use last of all. You shouldn't place geometry on top of this, because this is used as a way of making the object look more aesthetically pleasing, and also to clean up any sharp edges to save from injury. We're going to bring this around and look at the edges. So the first one I'm going to do is this one here. We're going to do curvature that cleans up this edge. To do that, I'm going to select the edges. So this edge that runs across here, and this edge that runs across here. Control select those. So I'm holding down the control key, I selected one, hold down the control key, select the other. And come up to part design, apply a dress up feature, and apply a fillet. This curves these edges off. Now if we come down to the left hand side, we can see we've got the edges and a radius. And we can increase this and see what happens on the right hand side. If we go too far, the fillet will go into error. So if I click again, you can see it's disappeared and this has gone into error. So if I hit OK now, you can see we've got failed to create fillet. And we've got the report view that's popped up. Now we can turn that off by going to the Edit, Preferences, Output window, and you see I've got Show Report View on warnings unchecked and Show Report View on error. Let's uncheck that and OK. Let's get rid of that one and hit OK. See, it's come up failed to create fillet, which is absolutely fine, and we've got no report view showing. Let's bring this fillet down. So 24, I'm going to go down to say 20 and hit OK. We've now got that fillet there. Let's do the same with these edges. This time I'm just going to select one and click the fillet tool. From the toolbar this time, you can see that edge is added in there. And I'm going to set this to 10mm. So I typed in 10 and I've clicked off. That does me, but I want to add more edges. To do that, we click Add, we locate our edge and click it. And come around again. This Add is still selected, so we can just click on that edge. If we accidentally add an edge, say this one, then we can just remove it from here. Hit remove, and we have to select the edge. So click, and it disappears. Anytime we can just tweak the radius to see what it looks like. We'll add one more. Make sure the add has been selected, and click. And just tweak the radius, and we can see that's all in there nicely. Let's hit OK. So we got one fillet there, and then the next fillet. At any time we can see what our work is like at any stage. We can see these have all been hidden, but we can bring them back by pressing the spacebar. You can see that our tip action has been grayed out, but this is still our tip. And we can see the fillets are no longer there. And as we move up, we can see how this object has been built. Just click on the last fillet, press the spacebar. At any time we can double click and adjust this. So let's add the last fillet. So I'm going to click on this line inside and add the fillet. And we'll increase the fillet to about 5mm. Let's add another one on the other side. Click add, click the edge and hit OK. We've now completed the build. Examining the tree view, you can see we've got a pad, and inside that we have a sketch. And this is the sketch that it's been built by. I've just pressed the spacebar on there just to show where that sketch is and to show it on the screen. Let's press the spacebar on the pocket and come into the sketch and press the spacebar on that. So you can see the sketch in white around those holes. Same for this pad. The sketch, we can see the pad there. And lastly, we've got the fillets, pressing the spacebar as we go through, and we can see what's happened. We can hide the sketches by clicking on the sketch from the screen as well. It highlights on the left hand side, and press the spacebar. So the next thing is to export this out as something like an STL to allow us to 3D print it or use it somewhere else, say in another 3D program. To do that, we need to select the last action from the left hand side here. So this one here, and we just go up to File and Export. And it'll ask us the file name and also the file type. Now if we come down, we can see we've got STL, which I'm going to use. Click on that. We need to specify the extension because we've got two extensions here. We've got STL and AST. So we need to specify that. So just type in .stl and we can save it. That's exported out. We can even export out this one, this fillet, the one without the curved edges here. And we'll click on it, File, Export, and we've got body fillet 001.stl, and we can save that as well. I'm going to create a new document so we can have a look at those STL files. So click on the new document. We've got two open, so you can see we've got the example one here and the unnamed. And come to File, Import, and let's find our STL file. Here they are. So I've highlighted both those using the Shift or the Control and hit Open. So we've imported two STL files. I'm going to click on the first one and press the spacebar. You can see this is the one with the fillet in here. And we'll just press the spacebar again and click on this one and press the spacebar. And this is the one without that fillet. So that's it for video 2. We've created an object on a single plane, and now we're going to move on to video 3, where we're going to create an object on multiple planes and also output to a technical drawing. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in the next one. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to the site. I also have a Ko-Fi or a coffee site that you can donate to if you so desire, and that's at ko-fi.com/MANG0. I also run a Patreon where you can subscribe and get extra content, and that's at www.patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions. Any money that's kindly donated will be used to expand the channel. Thanks a lot for watching and subscribing, and I'll see you again soon.